Luke Skywalker, a name whispered across the stars, a legend who stood against the darkness and who changed the fate of the galaxy. He wasn't just a hero, he was a symbol of hope, resilience, and above all, compassion. But even the greatest of heroes have their flaws, and for Luke, his only true weakness was also his greatest strength, his refusal to let go. His inability to fight without restraint against those who he held close. To understand why this vulnerability makes Luke Skywalker such a noble Jedi, but also could be a legitimate weakness, we have to go back to the foundation of his skill. In fact, in many accounts, this is really the only weakness in Luke Skywalker's form. But what about the lightsaber he wielded and the philosophy behind it? Luke Skywalker wasn't just a master duelist, he was perhaps the greatest practitioner of the blade full stop in all of galactic history. Trained initially by Obi-Wan Kenobi and later Yoda, Luke was introduced to the ancient forms of lightsaber combat, drawn from the teachings of the old Jedi. Yet, there were many Jedi that adhered strictly to one or two forms, but Luke's curiosity, his drive, and his connection to the Force led him down a unique path to mastery. Luke didn't just stop at simply learning the 7 classical forms of combat. He transcended them and improved upon them. He studied them, dissected them, and then wove them together into something uniquely his own. And Luke made the decision to move beyond teaching the 7 forms as they were initially taught. Luke Skywalker's core style, though, was still built on Form 5 Gem-So, the same lightsaber form as his father Anakin, and the one that he favored. Gem-So was powerful, aggressive, and designed to overwhelm enemies with relentless counterattacks and raw strength. But where Anakin adapted it slightly with elements of Form 4 Ataru, adding more increased mobility and footwork, Luke took this even further. Luke blended the strength and power of Gem-So with the Ataru acrobatics and unpredictable footwork, and created a hybrid that allowed him to dominate the battlefield both physically and strategically. Luke's strikes were powerful, precise, but never reckless. He could switch between heavy crushing blows and graceful flowing movement in an instant. He was a balance of offense and defense that reflected his growth both as a warrior and as a Jedi Master. But for all of his technical perfection, Luke's philosophy as a duelist was never about power, it was always about control. But not just control of his lightsaber, control of himself, control of his emotions, control over the very energy that bound all things together. And it was this philosophy where his weakness was. His nobility. You see, in the realm of a lightsaber, according to many, Luke Skywalker had one fatal flaw. That flaw was that he continuously and frequently held back. Luke never held back out of fear of losing, not because he doubted his abilities, but because he could never fully sever his heart from a fight. When Luke faced his enemies, he didn't see monsters, he didn't see threats to be extinguished, he saw people who could be saved, people who were broken, corrupted, but never truly lost. This restraint made him more than a warrior, it made him a Jedi in the truest sense. Yet in moments of personal conflict, when he faced those tied to his past or to his heart, restraint had nearly cost Luke everything. Take for instance his battles with Lumaya. Lumaya was once Shira Bree, an agent of the Empire who worked undercover in order to infiltrate the rebellion and get close to Luke. Though Luke sensed the darkness within her, he also felt a deep connection, a closeness, and Luke trusted her. At a time, she was one of his closest friends, but when she was revealed to be a servant of the dark side, Vader and Palpatine, transformed, brandishing a lightsaber that was designed to break through the defenses of a standard lightsaber, Luke was put into a position he rarely ever experienced: emotional hesitation. Lumaya blamed Luke for everything, and Lumaya wanted Luke Skywalker dead more than anything. She used this reluctance to harm someone that he cared for. Luke's defenses wavered, and she struck. She even gained the upper hand against Luke Skywalker for a time, despite being far weaker than him. Not only weaker in the realm of the Force, but a way less skilled duelist. But this was not a failure of Luke's skill. It was a failure of his heart. Perhaps the most painful example of this came only from his nephew, Jacen Solo. Once Jacen fell to the dark side and became Darth Kaitis, he was one of the most dangerous Sith Lords in history. And Luke even mentioned that Kaitis was more dangerous than Vader. Jacen was not just an enemy, he was family. The son of his sister Leia, a boy who Luke had trained personally, believing that he was destined for greatness and good. But as Jacen fell deeper into the darkness, manipulating the galaxy around him, committing atrocities under the guise of bringing order and peace, Luke was forced to confront him not as a Jedi, but as an uncle. But here, his weakness re-emerged. Luke could have ended Kaitis quickly and early. He had the skill, the power. But what held him back was not a lack of strength. It was a lingering hope that Jason could be redeemed, that there was light buried beneath the darkness. And Jason knew that this is what Luke was counting on, and Darth Caedus used it. In their duels, Luke often dominates physically, but mentally he's conflicted, torn between the duty of a Jedi and his love for his nephew. Jason used that hesitation to survive. He knew here he could force Luke on the defense in ways that no ordinary Sith Lord ever could have. And then of course, there was Vader. Luke's duel with Vader on the second Death Star wasn't just a physical confrontation, it was an emotional battle for one's soul. When Luke struck, his power was undeniable. He overwhelmed his father, drove him to his knees, and disarmed him. But in the moment of triumph, Luke looked down. He saw not a Sith, but a broken man, a man who was once a hero, and Luke stopped. Luke could not deliver the final blow, even though the threat loomed larger than ever. The Emperor stood feet away, waiting to corrupt him, waiting to twist his compassion into hatred. But Luke refused, because that is who Luke Skywalker is, a Jedi. Luke's greatest weakness is his greatest strength, his refusal to become a monster, even in the face of monsters. The belief that no soul is beyond redemption to Luke, an unwavering faith in the light side, even when it seems that all hope is lost. This is what makes him not just a great duelist, but a great Jedi. Luke fights never for glory, not even for victory, but for peace. If Luke had any sort of weakness, this would be it, if you even want to classify it like that. Luke had long embraced the ideals of peace, the teaching passed down from his mentors who believed the path of Jedi was one of restraint, wisdom, and harmony. Yet, there's a deeper truth that he had come to understand, a truth misunderstood by those who mistook mercy for weakness. Luke Skywalker realized that true peace was not always won through words. Sometimes it was forged in the shadow of overwhelming strength, so profound that it need to be displayed to be known. But sometimes, it need not be displayed. Standing in the heart of conflict, Luke embodied this truth. His presence alone, unyielding, calm, was a reminder that power uncontrolled was not power at all. Luke could have ended nearly every fight with a gesture, could have drawn upon the Force and crushed his foes as easily as he could have breathed. But Luke chose not to, for power restrained spoke louder than the clash of sabers or the roar of the Force. It was not the man who flaunted his strength that was truly powerful, but the one who held it back when every instinct demanded otherwise. Luke proved that as he stood silent, yet commanding, the weight of his mastery pressing on the room was like an invisible tide. Luke did not need to display his strength. His refusal to use it was proof enough that he was the most powerful man there. And in that quiet defiance, he revealed the essence of true peace, one not born from submission, but from unwavering conviction that power without control is nothing, and that true strength lies not in domination, but in that restraint. Luke Skywalker's only true weakness was never a lack of power, but rather maybe his hesitation to wield it. A flaw born not from fear, at least not of his enemies, but fear of losing himself and his compassion. His restraint, while noble, did leave cracks in an otherwise unshakable resolve, opening those who thrived on darkness to exploit it. The Sith, masters of manipulation, understood this hesitation too well. They thrived in moments of desperation when survival teetered on the edge of violence, and they could twist the Grandmaster's compassion into a liability. Luke was determined to remain a Jedi, a hero, to prove that power could be held without corruption. And for that reason, Luke was more than just a warrior. Luke Skywalker was a legend. What makes Luke truly awesome isn't his power alone, but his relentless belief that power must be wielded with purpose, with restraint, and compassion, even when the darkness tempts you the most. The strength of Luke lies in not what he can do, but what he chooses not to. He chooses to defy the very nature of the dark side and of the Sith. And even when he is tested, even when it nearly costs him everything, he refuses to become what he fights against. He proves that balance and that constant battle within himself makes him not only powerful, but also truly a Jedi Master. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on Luke Skywalker's only real weakness in combat, if you even want to call it that? And as always, thank you so much for visiting our archives. We would be honored if you would hit the subscribe button and enroll. And as always, may the Force be with you.